He was the ruler of the Shadowclaw Pack, the most feared Alpha King in the Northern Territories. But on a freezing Tuesday night, he wasn't a king. He was a broken body left to rot in a ditch, betrayed by his own blood, curling his battered frame around two shivering newborns. No one stopped. No one cared. Until Adele Vance, a woman with $3 in her bank account and a heart too big for her own good, pulled over. She didn't know she was dragging a billionaire tycoon and a lethal predator into her tiny apartment. She didn't know that saving him would put a target on her back. This is the true story of how a waitress saved a king, and how he burned the world down to repay her. Let's get into the story. The rain in Seattle didn't just fall, it punished. It was a freezing, relentless sheet of grey that turned the asphalt of Route 9 into a slick, black mirror. Adele Vance gripped the steering wheel of her beat-up 2012 Honda Civic, her knuckles white. The heater had died 3 weeks ago, and her breath fogged up the windshield every few seconds, forcing her to wipe it with the sleeve of her waitress uniform. It was 2:30 a.m. Her shift at the Rusty Spoon Diner had been brutal. 12 hours on her feet, $50 in tips, and a manager, Rick, who had threatened to fire her because she didn't smile enough at the drunk patrons. "Just get home, Adele," she whispered to herself, her voice trembling from the cold. "Just get home, heat up a can of soup, and sleep." She was 23, alone in the world since her grandmother passed, and drowning in student debt she couldn't pay because she had to drop out to pay for the funeral. Life wasn't a fairy tale. It was a grind. As she rounded the sharp curve near the dense Blackwood Forest Preserve, her headlights caught something on the side of the road. Usually, it was roadkill. Deer, raccoons. But this was too large, and it was moving. Adele slowed down, her heart hammering against her ribs. Safety logic screamed at her to keep driving. A lone woman stopping on a dark highway in the middle of a storm. That was how true crime documentaries started. But then she saw it. A hand. A pale human hand reaching up from the muddy ditch, grasping at the wet grass before collapsing again. "Oh my God!" Adele gasped. She slammed on the brakes, the car skidding slightly before coming to a halt on the shoulder. She grabbed the heavy flashlight she kept in the glove box, her only weapon, and shoved the door open. The wind hit her like a physical blow, soaking her uniform instantly. "Hello!" she screamed over the roar of the rain. "Can you hear me?" She scrambled down the muddy embankment, her sneakers slipping on the wet earth. When the beam of her flashlight hit the figure, she choked back a scream. It was a man. He was massive, easily 6'4", but he was a ruin. His clothes were shredded, looking like he'd been put through a wood chipper. Deep, jagged claw marks, too big for a bear, too precise for a wolf, tore across his chest and abdomen. Blood pooled beneath him, mixing with the mud. Sir, I'm calling 911. Adele fumbled for her phone, her wet fingers shaking. "No!" The man's voice was a guttural growl, sounding more like grinding rocks than human speech. He lifted his head. His eyes were a startling, glowing amber before they faded to a pained hazel. "No, police. They will kill them." "Kill who?" Adele asked, freezing. The man shifted his broken body, groaning in agony as he uncurled his arms. Adele dropped her flashlight. Tucked against his chest, shielded from the freezing rain by his own battered body, were 2 infants. They couldn't have been more than a month old. They were wrapped in a torn, expensive-looking suit jacket, silent and blue-lipped from the cold. "Please," the man rasped, his hand gripping Adele's ankle with surprising strength. "Take them. Leave me. Just take them." Adele looked at the dying man, then at the babies. She looked up at the desolate road. If she left him, he was dead within the hour. If she took the babies and left him, the guilt would kill her. "I'm not leaving anyone," Adele said, a sudden fierce resolve taking over. "Let go of my leg. I need to get them in the car first." It took her 20 minutes of hell to get them into the car. She put the babies in the back seat, wrapped in her spare gym clothes. Then came the impossible task. The man was dead weight, pure muscle and bone. She had to drag him up the embankment, inch by agonizing inch, slipping in the mud, screaming in frustration. He tried to help, pushing with his legs, but one of his legs was twisted at a sickening angle. Finally, she shoved him into the passenger seat, reclining it all the way back. He passed out the moment the door closed. Adele sat in the driver's seat, hyperventilating, mud caked in her hair and blood on her hands. She looked at the stranger. Even under the bruises and blood, he had a jawline carved from granite and dark hair that plastered to his forehead. He looked dangerous. He looked like trouble. "You better not be a serial killer," she whispered, putting the car in gear, "because I cannot afford to die today." She didn't drive to the hospital. He had said, "They will kill them." The terror in his voice had been real. Adele drove to the only place she felt safe, her tiny, drafty cabin on the outskirts of town, hidden down a gravel lane. As she drove, she didn't notice the shadow of a massive grey wolf watching from the tree line, its eyes narrowing as it watched the tail lights fade. The wolf sniffed the blood in the rain, threw its head back, and howled, a sound that signaled the hunt was not over. The next 3 days were a blur of antibiotics, hot water, and fear. Adele had used her emergency credit card to buy formula, diapers, and every first aid supply the 24-hour CVS carried. She had cleaned the stranger's wounds, deep, terrifying gashes that looked like sword strikes or animal attacks. She stitched the worst ones herself with a sewing kit, her hands steady despite her panic. The man, she found a wallet in his shredded pants that said Lucian Thorne, burned with a fever so high she could feel the heat radiating off him from 3 feet away. She had set him up on her old pull-out couch in the living room. The twins, a boy and a girl, were surprisingly quiet. They slept in a laundry basket, lined with soft towels next to the heater. On the 4th morning, Adele was in the kitchen, trying to mix formula, while calculating if she could skip her electric bill this month, when she felt eyes on her. She spun around. Lucian was sitting up. He looked terrifying. Even pale and bandaged, his presence filled the small room. His chest, wrapped in white gauze, heaved as he took in his surroundings. His eyes darted to the laundry basket, and his body tensed to spring. "They're safe," Adele said quickly, holding up the bottle. "They're sleeping. I just fed them 2 hours ago." Lucian froze, his gaze locking onto her. For a second, Adele felt a strange sensation, a pull in her chest, like a magnet snapping into place. His pupils dilated. "Where am I?" His voice was rough, unused. "My house, just outside Seattle," Adele said, keeping the kitchen island between them. "I found you on Route 9. You told me not to call the police." Lucian rubbed his temples, wincing. "Route 9, the ambush." He looked down at his leg, which Adele had splintered. "You did this?" "I watched a YouTube tutorial on setting bones," Adele admitted, her face flushing. "I didn't have much choice. You were heavy." Lucian looked at her, really looked at her. For the first time, he saw the dark circles under her eyes, the cheap uniform hanging on a chair, the unmistakable look of someone who carried the weight of the world on narrow shoulders. "You saved us," he said softly. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of disbelief. "Why? You don't know who I am." "I know you're Lucian Thorne," she said, pointing to his wallet on the table. "And I know those babies were freezing. I wasn't going to leave them. Lucian reached for the wallet, but stopped. He looked at the twins. Leo and Luna, he whispered. Their names are Leo and Luna. Where is their mother? Adele asked gently. A shadow passed over Lucian's face, dark and violent. The air in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. She died giving birth to them, 3 days before my brother tried to murder me. Adele gasped. Your brother? Calen! Lucian spat the name like a curse. He wants the family business. He wants the throne. The throne? Adele raised an eyebrow. Are you royalty, or just delusional from the fever? Lucian blinked, realizing he had slipped. To a human, talk of alphas and pack kings sounded like insanity. He had to be careful. He was currently powerless. His wolf spirit, the source of his immense strength and healing, was silent, dormant from the silver poisoning in the blades Calen had used. If Calen found him now, he couldn't protect the twins, and he couldn't protect this brave, foolish, human woman. Corporate royalty, Lucian lied smoothly, though the pain in his eyes was real. A CEO position. My brother hired hitmen. If I go back now, or if I call anyone, he'll track the signal. I have to stay dead for a while. Adele bit her lip. This was dangerous, but she looked at Leo and Luna, sleeping peacefully. Okay, you can stay until you can walk, but I have rules. Lucian, the Alpha King who commanded an army of 5,000 wolves and owned half the real estate in Chicago, looked at the petite waitress in oversized sweatpants. Rules. Rule 1. You sleep on the couch. Rule 2. You help with the babies when you can stand. Rule 3. Do not die in my living room. I won't get the security deposit back. A tiny, genuine smile tugged at the corner of Lucian's mouth. It transformed his face from terrifying to devastatingly handsome. Agreed. For the next 2 weeks, a strange domestic routine formed. Adele went to work, pulling double shifts to pay for the extra food. When she came home, Lucian was there. He healed with impossible speed. By day 7, he was limping around the kitchen. By day 10, he was doing push-ups on the floor to regain his strength. He was surprisingly good with the twins. Adele would come home exhausted, smelling of grease and cheap coffee, to find Lucian holding both babies, rocking them with a gentle rhythm that belied his size. One rainy Tuesday, Adele came home and collapsed onto the kitchen chair, putting her head in her hands. Rough night? Lucian asked. He was chopping vegetables, potatoes and carrots Adele had bought on sale. He moved with a predatory grace that always made Adele's breath hitch. My car broke down, she mumbled into her hands. Transmission. It's $2,000 to fix. I don't have it. If I can't get to work, I lose the job. If I lose the job, we lose the apartment. She didn't see Lucian stop chopping. She didn't see his eyes flash gold for a split second. He walked over and placed a hand on her shoulder. His touch was searing hot. Adele. She looked up, tears swimming in her eyes. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to burden you. It's just, you saved the lives of a king and his heirs, Lucian said, his voice low and intense, slipping into his alpha tone without realizing it. Do you think I will let you fall? Do you think I will let you starve? You don't have any money, Lucian. Your cards are flagged, remember? Lucian leaned down, his face inches from hers. The smell of him, rain, pine, and musk, was intoxicating. I don't need credit cards to fix this. I just need time. Give me 2 days. I will handle it. How? Trust me, he said. The way he looked at her made her heart race. It wasn't gratitude anymore. It was something else, something primal. But the peace couldn't last. That night, while Adele slept, Lucian stood on the porch of the cabin. The wind shifted. He smelled it instantly. Wet dog. Sulphur. Rot. Rogues. Kaelin's scouts had found them. Lucian looked back at the window where Adele and his children slept. His wolf was still weak, the silver poison lingering in his blood. He wasn't at full strength, but as he watched the shadows move in the tree line, a low growl vibrated in his chest. He wouldn't run this time. If they wanted the king, they would have to come through the devil himself. The silence of the forest was broken, not by a howl, but by the sound of glass exploding. Adele woke up screaming as her bedroom window shattered inward. A massive, dark shape hurtled through the frame, landing on her floor with a heavy thud. It wasn't a rock. It was a man dressed in tactical black gear, smelling of wet fur and gasoline. "Where is he?" the intruder snarled, his voice distorted, his eyes glowing a sickly yellow. Adele scrambled backward on her bed, grabbing the heavy brass lamp from her nightstand. "Get out! I'm calling the police!" The man lunged, but before his fingers could graze her ankle, the bedroom door was kicked off its hinges. Lucian stood there. He wasn't the injured patient anymore. He was a nightmare in sweatpants. With a roar that shook the floorboards, Lucian crossed the room in a blur. He grabbed the intruder by the throat and slammed him against the wall. The sound of drywall cracking echoed like a gunshot. "You made a mistake coming here," Lucian growled. His eyes were no longer hazel. They were burning gold, two suns in the darkness. The intruder pulled a knife, a jagged, silver-coated blade. He slashed at Lucian's chest. Smoke hissed where the metal touched Lucian's skin, burning him. Lucian didn't flinch. He twisted the man's arm until it snapped, then threw him through the broken window, back into the night. "Adele, get the twins!" Lucian commanded, not looking back. "Go to the bathroom, lock the door. Do not open it unless you hear my voice." "Lucian, you're bleeding!" Adele cried, staring at the fresh burns on his chest. "Go!" he roared, the sound vibrating in her bones. Adele didn't argue. She sprinted to the living room, scooped up Leo and Luna, and bolted for the small bathroom. She locked the door, sat in the empty bathtub, and pulled the shower curtain around them, clutching the babies tight. Outside the door, all hell broke loose. It sounded like a demolition crew was taking the cabin apart. Furniture smashed, walls splintered. There were growls, deep, animalistic snarls that no human throat could make, and the sickening wet thuds of violence. Adele covered her ears, tears streaming down her face. "What is he?" The question finally pierced through her denial. The glowing eyes, the speed, the healing, the talk of packs. Suddenly, silence fell. Heavy, oppressive silence. Adele held her breath. The doorknob rattled. Adele. It was Lucian, but his voice sounded wet, ragged. She opened the door. The living room was destroyed. The sofa was overturned, the TV shattered. 3 men lay motionless on the floor in twisted heaps. Lucian stood in the center of the carnage. He was covered in blood. Some his, mostly theirs. He was leaning against the wall, breathing hard, clutching his side. "We have to leave," he said, spitting blood onto the floor. "More will come. Kaelin knows I'm alive." "Lucian." Adele stepped over a broken chair, her eyes wide. "What are you?" Lucian looked at her, his eyes fading back to hazel, full of regret. "I'm a monster, Adele. But right now, I'm the only thing standing between you and a shallow grave. Do you trust me?" Adele looked at the bodies. She looked at the twins in her arms. She had no car, no money, and her home was a crime scene. "I trust you," she whispered. "Good." Lucian pulled a burner phone from the pocket of one of the dead men. He dialed a number. "It's me," Lucian said into the phone. His voice changed. It became cold, authoritative, the voice of a king. "Code Black. Location: 45 North, 122 West. Bring the extraction team, bring the medical unit, and bring Marcus. We're going to war." He hung up and looked at Adele. "Pack your things. Only what matters. We leave in 10 minutes. "Where are we going?" Adele asked, her voice trembling. Lucian walked over to her, wiping a streak of blood from her cheek with his thumb. The tenderness was shocking after the violence. "Home," he said. "I'm taking back what's mine." The extraction was like something out of a movie. 10 minutes after the call, the sound of rotor blades chopped through the storm. A sleek, black helicopter with no markings landed in the small clearing behind Adele's cabin. 4 men in suits jumped out, flanked by what looked like Special Forces soldiers. They didn't just walk, they moved in formation. When they saw Lucian, they didn't say hello. They dropped to one knee, bowing their heads in perfect unison. "Alpha," one of them said, his voice thick with reverence and relief. "We thought you were dead." "Not yet, Marcus," Lucian said, handing the twins to the man. "Secure the heirs, and get her on board. Touch her with disrespect, and you lose a hand." Adele was ushered into the leather-lined interior of the helicopter. She felt completely out of place in her stained uniform and sneakers. Lucian sat across from her, while a medic immediately began stitching his wounds. "Lucian," Adele hissed over the noise of the rotors as they lifted off. "Who are these people? Why did they bow to you?" Lucian looked out the window as the dark forest and Adele's old life faded away. "I told you I was a CEO. That wasn't entirely a lie. My family runs the Thorn Corporation. We own shipping lines, tech firms, real estate. And the growling, the eyes." Lucian met her gaze. "We are werewolves, Adele. I am the alpha of the Shadow Claw pack. The men who attacked us were rogues sent by my brother." Adele stared at him. She waited for the punchline. It didn't come. "You're crazy," she said. "Am I?" Lucian leaned forward. "Think about the healing, the strength, the heat." Adele fell silent. It was impossible, but it was the only thing that made sense. 2 hours later, the helicopter descended toward the Chicago skyline. They landed on the roof of the tallest building in the city, the Obsidian Tower. It was a black glass needle piercing the clouds. As they stepped out, an army of staff was waiting. Maids, butlers, security guards. They all bowed low as Lucian walked past, limping slightly, but holding his head high. "Alpha King!" A chant rippled through the crowd. Adele walked behind him, clutching her backpack, feeling small. She watched as Lucian transformed. The vulnerability she had seen in her cabin was gone. In its place was a cold, hard arrogance. He barked orders, and people scrambled. They were led to a penthouse that was bigger than Adele's entire apartment building. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city lights. Everything was marble, gold, and velvet. "Marcus," Lucian said to his second-in-command, a scarred man with kind eyes. "Take Ms. Vance to the guest wing. Get her anything she needs. Clothes, food, a phone." "Wait," Adele said, stepping forward. "Guest wing? You're sending me away?" Lucian stopped. He turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Adele, you are safe here. My security is impenetrable. But I have work to do. I have a brother to hunt." "I saved your life," Adele said, her voice rising. "I dragged your heavy ass out of a ditch. I changed your diapers. Well, your bandages. Don't dismiss me like an employee." The room went silent. The guards looked terrified. No one spoke to the Alpha King like that. Lucian's eyes flashed. He closed the distance between them, towering over her. "I am doing this to protect you. If Kalen knows you are important to me, you become a target." "I'm already a target," Adele shouted back. "They blew up my house." Lucian stared at her. The fire in her eyes matched his own. For the first time in weeks, he smiled. A real, dangerous smile. Fair point, he murmured. Fine. You stay in the master's suite. With me. The guards gasped. Sir, Marcus interrupted nervously. Lady Seraphina is waiting in the library. She heard of your return. Lucian's face hardened. Seraphina. Who is Seraphina? Adele asked, sensing the tension. My fiancée, Lucian said flatly. Or at least, the woman the council chose for me. Adele felt a cold pit in her stomach. Of course. He was a king. He had a queen. She was just the waitress who found him in a ditch. I see, Adele said, stepping back, her pride stinging. Then I'll go to the guest wing. I wouldn't want to intrude. She turned to follow a maid, keeping her back straight, refusing to let him see the tears forming. Lucian watched her go, his fists clenched at his sides. He wanted to run after her. He wanted to claim her right there in the hallway, but he couldn't. Not yet. He had to deal with the politics first. He had to deal with Seraphina, the daughter of the Southern Alpha, whose alliance kept his pack funded. Lucian turned to Marcus. Get the council ready, and double the guard on Adele. If a hair on her head is touched, heads will roll. Lucian walked toward the library doors. He pushed them open. Sitting on a velvet armchair, sipping a glass of red wine, was Seraphina. She was stunning. Blonde hair, ice blue eyes, wearing a dress that cost more than Adele's life earnings. Lucian, she purred, standing up. She didn't look relieved. She looked calculating. You look terrible. I heard you brought a pet home. A human pet. Lucian walked to his desk and poured a drink, not looking at her. Careful, Seraphina. You're talking about the woman who saved my life. She's a human, Lucian. Seraphina laughed, a cruel, tinkling sound. She's a blink in our lifespan, a toy. Surely you don't intend to keep her. The council won't allow it. You need a wolf to breed strong heirs. Oh, wait. You already have those bastards. Lucian slammed his glass down. The crystal shattered. Speak of my children again, Lucian whispered, and the alliance is over. Seraphina's smile faltered. Kalen is calling for a vote of no confidence tomorrow, Lucian. He says you're weak. He says you've been compromised by a human. If you walk into that council room with a waitress on your arm, you lose the throne. And if you lose the throne, Kalen kills us all. She walked over and placed a hand on his chest. Send her away, Lucian. Pay her off. It's the only way to survive. Lucian looked at the door where Adele had left. He had a choice to make. Save his kingdom or keep the woman who had stolen his heart. The dress Marcus brought her was beautiful, a deep midnight blue silk that hugged her curves, but wearing it felt like wearing a target. You don't have to go down there, Marcus said gently, standing by the door of the guest suite. The Blood Moon Gala is intense. It's where the pack politics happen. It's a pit of vipers. Adele looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a princess, but she felt like the waitress from Route 9. He's going to be judged tonight, isn't he? Because of me? Marcus hesitated, then nodded. Kalen has called the council. He claims Lucian is unfit to rule because he is harboring a human stray instead of securing a political alliance. If Lucian doesn't prove his strength tonight, he loses the crown, and likely his life. Then I have to go, Adele said, smoothing the silk with trembling hands. I won't let him face them alone. When Adele arrived at the top floor of the obsidian tower, the ballroom was a sea of black tuxedos and glittering gowns. The air was thick with a scent Adele was beginning to recognize, the musky, electric smell of pheromones and power. As soon as she stepped through the golden doors, the music stopped. 500 pairs of eyes turned to her. Silence swept across the room like a cold wind. She could hear the whispers. That's her? The human pet? She smells like cheap soap and fear. Adele kept her chin high, scanning the room for Lucien. She found him near the throne at the far end. He looked majestic in a black velvet suit, his dark hair slicked back, radiating an aura of lethal command. Beside him stood Serafina, wearing a dress of pure diamonds, her hand resting possessively on Lucien's arm. They looked like a king and queen. Adele felt a crack in her heart. Lucien's eyes met hers. For a second, his mask slipped. She saw panic. He shook his head slightly, a silent command. Go back. But it was too late. Well, well, a booming voice echoed through the hall. The little nursemaid has arrived. Calen stepped out from the crowd. He looked exactly like Lucien, but where Lucien was granite, Calen was jagged glass. His smile didn't reach his cold, dead eyes. Welcome to the lion's den, human, Calen sneered, circling Adele. The crowd parted, leaving her isolated in the center of the dance floor. Tell us, what tricks did you use to seduce the Alpha King? Did you beg? Did you offer yourself in the mud? I saved his life, Adele said, her voice shaking but clear. Which is more than his own brother did. A collective gasp went through the room. No one spoke back to Calen. Calen's smile vanished. He stepped closer, his presence suffocating. You have a sharp tongue. Let's see if you have the grace to match. He signaled a waiter. As the man passed with a tray of red wine, Calen subtly shoved him. The tray tipped. Adele gasped as 3 glasses of dark red wine splashed over the front of her expensive blue gown. It looked like a gunshot wound spreading across her chest. The room erupted in cruel laughter. Serafina covered her mouth, giggling elegantly. Oh dear, Calen mocked. Look at her, a stained rag. Is this your queen, brother? Is this who you bring to the Blood Moon Gala? A clumsy human who can't even stand without making a mess? Adele stood frozen, the wine dripping down her legs, the laughter ringing in her ears. She looked at Lucien, pleading silently for him to help her. Do something. Say something. Lucien descended the stairs from the throne. The room went quiet again. He walked toward Adele. His face was a mask of stone. He didn't look at Calen. He looked at Adele. Lucien, she whispered, tears stinging her eyes. Lucien stopped 3 feet away. He didn't offer her a napkin. He didn't offer her his jacket. He looked at her with an expression of utter boredom. Marcus, Lucien said, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. Why is the help on the dance floor? Adele felt the blood drain from her face. What? Lucien turned to the crowd, raising his voice. This woman was a useful tool when I was injured. She changed bandages. She fed the children. But she seems to have forgotten her place. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a checkbook. He scribbled a number, ripped out the check, and let it flutter to the floor at Adele's feet. $1 million, Lucien said coldly, for your services. Now, take it and get out. You are ruining the aesthetic of my evening. Adele stared at the check on the floor. Then she stared at the man she had dragged through the rain, the man who had held her hand in the kitchen. You don't mean that, she whispered. I am the Alpha King, Lucien sneered, leaning down so only she could hear, his eyes hard as flint. And you are a stray dog I picked up on the highway. Did you really think I could love you? He straightened up and offered his arm to Serafina, who glided over with a triumphant smirk. Security, Lucien barked. Escort Ms. Vance out. If she returns, kill her. Adele didn't scream. She didn't cry. The shock was so absolute it numbed her entire body. 2 guards grabbed her by the arms and dragged her backward. She watched Lucien turn his back on her, pulling Serafina into a waltz as the orchestra began to play. They dragged her to the service elevator, down to the parking garage, and threw her out onto the wet pavement of the back alley. "Don't come back, sweetheart," one guard laughed, tossing her wet bag of old clothes at her. "Take the money and run." The heavy metal doors slammed shut. Adele stood in the rain, the $1 million check clutched in her hand. It dissolved into pulp in the downpour. "He played me," she sobbed, her knees finally giving out. She collapsed onto the asphalt. "He just threw me away." She lay there for minutes, letting the rain wash away the wine and the humiliation. She had nothing. No home, no job. And the man she loved had just publicly executed her soul. "Such a pity," a smooth voice came from the shadows. Adele looked up. A black SUV had pulled up silently. The window rolled down. It was Kalen. "My brother always was a pragmatic man," Kalen said, opening the door. "He chose the crown over the girl. Typical." Adele scrambled backward. "Stay away from me." Kalen stepped out, holding an umbrella. He didn't look aggressive. He looked fascinated. "You think he rejected you to save his reputation," Kalen mused. "But that's not why he did it, Adele. He did it because he sensed it, and he was terrified." "Sensed what?" Adele spat. "Your blood." Kalen took a step closer. "When the wine hit you, I smelled it. Under the cheap perfume. Under the human scent." Kalen lunged, grabbing her wrist before she could run. He pulled a small silver dagger from his sleeve and sliced a thin line across her palm. "Let go!" Adele screamed, kicking him. "Look!" Kalen commanded, pointing at her hand. Adele looked. The blood welling up from the cut wasn't red. It was a deep, shimmering crimson, flecked with streaks of silver. And as the rain hit it, the blood hissed and glowed in the darkness. "Impossible," Kalen whispered, his eyes widening in genuine fear and awe. "The legends are true." "What did you do to me?" Adele gasped, clutching her hand. "I didn't do anything." Kalen looked at her, and for the first time, he didn't look at her like a victim. He looked at her like a prize. "You aren't a human, Adele. You never were. You are a silver blood." "A what?" "The ancient line, the wolf hunters, the only creatures on Earth whose blood is toxic to alphas, and who can command a pack without ever shifting." Kalen laughed, a dark, manic sound. "Lucian didn't reject you because you were weak, Adele. He rejected you because he knew if the Council found out what you are, they wouldn't just kill you. They would start a war to possess you." Kalen's grip tightened on her arm. "Lucian tried to send you away to save you, but he made a mistake. He threw you right into my arms." Before Adele could scream, Kalen pressed a cloth soaked in chloroform over her mouth. The world went black. Back in the ballroom, the waltz ended. Lucian pulled away from Serafina instantly, his skin crawling from her touch. "You did well," Serafina whispered, tracing his jaw. "The Council is pleased. The human is gone." "Marcus," Lucian growled, ignoring her. "Is she safe? Is she in the taxi?" Marcus pressed his hand to his earpiece, listening to the security team. His face went pale. He looked at Lucian, terror in his eyes. "Alpha," Marcus stammered. "Where is she, Marcus?" Lucian's voice dropped, the air around him crackling with energy. "The guards. They left her in the alley. But the tracking beacon in her bag, it's moving. Fast. Who has her?" "Sir, the security footage shows Kalen's SUV," Lucian roared. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated rage that shattered the champagne flutes on the nearby tables. Guests screamed and covered their ears. Lucian's eyes turned pitch black. His tuxedo jacket ripped at the seams as his muscles expanded. "He has her!" Lucian snarled, his voice no longer human. "He has my mate! Lucian!" Serafina shrieked. "If you leave now, you forfeit the crown. The vote is in 1 hour! Lucian turned to the council members, who were watching in shock. He looked at the golden throne he had spent his whole life protecting. "You can have the damn crown," Lucian spat. He ran toward the balcony, shattering the glass doors with his shoulder. He leaped off the 50th floor of the obsidian tower, shifting in midair into a massive, midnight black wolf, landing on the streets of Chicago with a crack of thunder, running into the night to hunt down his brother. The king had fallen, but the monster was awake. Adele woke to the smell of rust and old blood. She was tied to a steel chair in the center of a massive, derelict factory. Moonlight filtered through holes in the corrugated metal roof, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Kaelin stood before her, sharpening a long, curved blade. Around them, in the shadows of the industrial machinery, 20 rogue wolves paced, their eyes glowing yellow and red, hungry for violence. "You're awake," Kaelin said, running his thumb along the edge of the knife. "Good. The ritual requires you to be conscious." "What ritual?" Adele asked, her voice raspy. She tested the ropes. They were infused with something that burned her skin. "Wolfsbane." "The transfer," Kaelin smiled. "Your blood, the silver blood, contains the essence of command. In the old days, alphas hunted your kind to extinction, because a single drop of your blood on a wolf's tongue could make him a god, or a slave. I intend to become a god." He stepped closer. "Lucian thinks he is coming to save you, but he is walking into a trap. These 20 wolves, they are pumped full of adrenaline and silver nitrate. They are suicide bombers, Adele. They will tear him apart before he even reaches us." "He won't come," Adele lied, her heart pounding. "He hates me. He rejected me." "He put on a show," Kaelin corrected her, "and a good one. But I know my brother. He is a sentimental fool." Boom! The massive iron doors of the factory buckled inward. The rogue wolves stopped pacing and turned toward the entrance, growling low in their throats. Boom! A second impact tore the doors off their hinges. They flew across the concrete floor, skidding to a halt near Adele's feet. In the gaping hole of the entrance stood the wolf. He was a nightmare of fur and muscle, standing 7 feet tall at the shoulder. His fur was blacker than the shadows, and his eyes were burning pools of gold. He didn't just look angry, he looked like the embodiment of wrath. "Kill him!" Kaelin screamed, pointing his knife at the beast. The 20 rogues charged. What followed wasn't a fight, it was a massacre. Lucian didn't slow down. He plowed into the first wave of wolves like a freight train. He caught one mid-air, snapping its spine with a sickening crunch, and used the body to bludgeon 2 others aside. He moved with a speed that blurred the eye, a whirlwind of claws and teeth. Adele watched in horror and awe. She had seen him gentle with the twins. She had seen him chopping vegetables. Now, she was seeing the king of the north. But there were too many of them. 3 wolves latched onto Lucian's flanks, their jaws sinking deep. Lucian roared in pain, thrashing to shake them off. But Kaelin's suicide bombers held on, tearing at his flesh. "Do it now!" Kaelin yelled, grabbing Adele's hair and yanking her head back. He brought the knife to her throat. "Lucian, submit, or I bleed her dry right now." The massive black wolf froze. He was bleeding from a dozen wounds, panting heavily, standing over a pile of broken bodies. He looked at Kaelin, then at Adele. The golden fire in his eyes dimmed to a look of pure despair. Slowly, agonizingly, Lucian lowered his head. He dropped to his belly, baring his neck in submission. "No!" Adele screamed. "Lucian, get up! He's going to kill us anyway!" "Smart boy," Kaelin laughed triumphantly. He looked at his rogues. "Hold him down. I want him to watch." 5 wolves jumped on Lucian, pinning him to the concrete. Kaelin turned back to Adele. Now, my dear, let's see what this magic blood can do. He pressed the knife into the skin of her neck. A single drop of blood, dark red with that strange, shimmering silver tint, welled up. Pain, sharp and hot, sliced through Adele. But with the pain came something else, a pulse, a beat, a roar in her ears that sounded like 1,000 voices screaming in unison. As Kaelin leaned in to lick the blood from the blade, Adele felt a surge of power explode from her chest. It wasn't magic. It was authority. It was an ancient, dormant gene waking up after centuries of sleep. Her eyes snapped open. They weren't brown anymore. They were pure, blinding silver. "Kneel!" The word didn't come from her throat. It came from the air itself. It blasted through the factory like a shock wave, shattering the windows high above. Kaelin froze. His pupils dilated. His hand shook, and he dropped the knife. The wolves holding Lucian down whined, their ears flattening against their skulls. They released him and scrambled backward, bellies low to the ground, terrified. "What?" Kaelin gasped, clutching his head. "What are you doing?" I said. Adele stood up, the ropes snapping around her wrists as if they were made of paper. She didn't know how she did it. She just willed it. "Kneel." Kaelin, the ambitious usurper, the man who wanted to be a god, fell to his knees. He tried to fight it, veins bulging in his neck, but his wolf spirit, the primal beast inside him, recognized a predator higher on the food chain. The silver blood wasn't just poison to alphas. It was their commander. Adele walked toward him. The rogue wolves parted for her, whimpering. She looked like a vengeance goddess, blood trickling down her neck, eyes glowing silver. She stopped in front of Kaelin. "You wanted my blood?" she whispered, her voice echoing with a metallic resonance. "You wanted to control the pack? Please!" Kaelin choked out, unable to look her in the eye. Adele looked past him to Lucian. The black wolf had shifted back. Lucian lay on the concrete, naked, covered in blood and grime, staring at her with an expression of absolute reverence. He wasn't scared. He looked proud. Adele pointed at Kaelin. She looked at Lucian. "He is yours," she said softly. Lucian stood up. He limped toward his brother. "The council isn't here, Kaelin," Lucian said, his voice cold. "There are no politics tonight, just the law of the wild." "Brother, wait!" Kaelin pleaded. "She's a witch. She's controlling us. We can rule together." Lucian grabbed Kaelin by the throat and lifted him into the air. "She isn't a witch. She is my queen, and you touched her." With a swift, brutal motion, Lucian ended the threat. He dropped Kaelin's lifeless body to the floor. The factory fell silent. The remaining rogue wolves looked at Adele, waiting for a command. "Go," she whispered, the silver glow fading from her eyes. "Run, and never come back." They fled into the night. Adele's knees buckled. The adrenaline crashed. She fell forward, expecting the hard concrete. Instead, she fell into warm, strong arms. Lucian caught her, pulling her against his chest, heedless of the blood and dirt. He buried his face in her neck, inhaling her scent, making a low, rumbling sound of comfort. "I thought I lost you," he murmured into her hair. "I thought I was too late." Adele pushed him back slightly, looking into his hazel eyes. "You jerk. You fired me. You gave me a check." Lucian winced. "I had to make them believe I didn't care. If they knew I loved you, Serafina would have killed you in the ballroom." "You love me?" Adele blinked. Lucian touched her cheek, wiping away a smear of dirt. "Adele, I loved you from the moment you yelled at me for not finishing my soup. I loved you when you held my children. I walked away from the throne tonight to find you. I don't care about the crown. I don't care about the council. I just want the girl from Route 9. Adele smiled, tears finally spilling over. Well, the girl from Route 9 is unemployed, so you're going to have to support her. Lucian laughed, a sound of pure relief. He kissed her then, a kiss that tasted of rain, danger, and forever. Epilogue. 3 months later. The obsidian tower was different now. The stuffy atmosphere was gone. The guards smiled. There were toys in the lobby. In the penthouse, the council sat around the long mahogany table. They were terrifying, powerful men and women. And they were all terrifyingly quiet. At the head of the table sat Lucian Thorne, the Alpha King, and next to him, in a chair of equal size, sat Adele Vance. She wore a tailored suit, and while her eyes were brown, everyone in the room knew that if pushed, they would turn silver. "The motion is passed," Adele said, her voice steady. "The ban on interspecies marriage is lifted, and the protection funds for the human shelters are doubled." An old council member cleared his throat. "But my queen, the budget." Adele just looked at him. She tapped a pen on the table. "Did I stutter?" she asked pleasantly. "No, Queen Adele," the man said quickly, bowing his head. The meeting adjourned. As the room cleared, Lucian turned to her, grinning. "You're terrifying," he said. "I learned from the best." Adele stood up. "Now come on. It's Leo and Luna's 6-month checkup, and if we're late, the pediatrician yells at me." Lucian stood and took her hand. "Yes, ma'am." They walked out of the boardroom, past the bowing guards, and into the elevator. The Alpha King and the Silver Queen. They had found each other in a ditch in the rain. They had been rejected, beaten, and left to die. But they had risen. And now, they didn't just rule the city, they owned it. And to think, it all started because she didn't just keep driving. And that brings us to the remarkable tale of Adele and Lucian, a story that proves fate often unfolds in the most unexpected ways. Adele believed she was simply lending a hand to a stranger in need, unaware that every choice she made was quietly reshaping the course of her life. What began as a single act of compassion unraveled into a journey of self-discovery, courage, and revelation. In helping someone else, she ultimately uncovered the truth of who she was and the power she had long carried without knowing. Their story reminds us that strength isn't defined by the sharpness of claws, the weight of crowns, or the fear others may feel in the presence of power. True strength reveals itself in the decisions made when no one is watching, in the instinct to protect, the willingness to trust, and the resolve to walk toward danger rather than away from it. Adele's greatest power wasn't the gift she later uncovered. It was the quiet bravery she had possessed all along. As for the twist, few could have anticipated the moment her hidden abilities surfaced, least of all Kaelin, whose shock reflected the audience's own. The revelation didn't just shift the direction of the story, it reframed everything we thought we knew about Adele's past and future. For readers who enjoyed the blend of romance, tension, and poetic justice, this tale offers a satisfying reminder that destiny often waits for a spark, not a prophecy. And for those who reached the end, consider yourself among the true believers in the rise of the silver.